Let's begin with a question, a deeply personal one. What is the most valuable asset you possess? It's not your car, which depreciates the moment you drive it off the lot. It's not your house, subject to the whims of the market. It is something utterly irreplaceable, finite, and non-renewable. It is your time, the hours and days of your one life. Now, what if I told you that you are likely voluntarily signing over portions of that precious asset to pay for things you no longer own, experiences you can barely remember, and for a cost that was never clearly disclosed? You are not just paying interest, you are paying a time tax. Consider Michael, a real estate agent from Austin. 3 years ago, he walked into a furniture store and fell in love with a beautiful, modern sectional sofa. Price tag, $2,000. He didn't have the cash, but he did have a credit card with a comfortable limit. He charged it. Life got busy. A car repair one month, a family trip another. He made the minimum payment, a sum that felt responsible and manageable, a mere $60 or so each month. 36 months later, the sofa is gone, worn out by kids and pets, but the debt is finally settled. Michael paid not $2,000, but approximately $3,100 for that now departed sofa. The $1,100 difference didn't buy him higher quality fabric or extra comfort. It bought the bank 36 months of his financial life. He traded over 1,000 future hours of his labor for the privilege of using money he didn't yet have. The sofa is landfill. The interest is a ghost, a permanent subtraction from his life's ledger. This is the foundational truth most consumers overlook. We discuss credit card interest as a percentage, an APR, a number on a statement. We frame it as a cost of borrowing. But this language is sterile and fails to capture its profound, invasive nature. We need a new lexicon. Let's call it what it is, the time tax. The mechanism of this tax is where the first critical oversights occur. Most people understand interest in simple terms. You borrow $100, you pay back $120. But credit card interest is not simple interest. It is a dynamic, daily force. First, forget monthly compounding. The financial engine of your credit card operates on a daily compounding cycle. Here is how it works. Your annual percentage rate, APR, is divided by 365 days. Each day, the issuer calculates the daily periodic rate and applies it to your average daily balance. That charge for a Tuesday lunch does not wait until the end of the billing cycle to start accruing interest. It begins its quiet digital fermentation on Wednesday, and on Thursday, you pay interest on Wednesday's new, slightly larger balance, which includes Tuesday's interest. This process repeats every single day. It is a microscopic, relentless accumulation. Over a month, this daily method generates more interest than if interest were calculated once on a month-end balance. The difference seems minuscule in a single cycle, but over a year of carrying a balance, it is the equivalent of a hidden fee on top of the stated APR. To understand the mentality that birthed this system, we must glance backward. Prior to the Card Act of 2009, a more predatory method was commonplace: the two-cycle average daily balance calculation. This method did not just calculate interest on your current balance. It could, in certain situations, reach back to the previous billing cycle's average daily balance, even if you had paid the previous statement in full. This meant a consumer could pay off their entire balance one month, carry a balance the next, and still be charged interest for both periods. It was a practice designed to maximize interest revenue from even the most responsible borrowers. While this specific method is now illegal, its legacy is important. It reveals a historical intent to structure calculations in the way most favorable to the issuer and least comprehensible to the consumer. The daily compounding that remains is the refined legal successor of that intent. Then there is the deceptive impact of fees on your true cost of borrowing. Consider a consumer with a low credit limit, perhaps someone rebuilding their credit. They obtain a secured card with a $500 limit and a $95 annual fee. They might think, a $95 fee is high, but I need this card. However, if they carry a balance of just $200 on that card at a 22% APR, the effective interest rate is catastrophically higher. The $95 fee is not just a fee, it functionally increases the cost of every dollar they borrow. Mathematically, it can balloon their effective APR to over 60% on that carried balance, a fact never shown on their statement. This is the overlooked synergy of fees and interest, where one dramatically amplifies the other, trapping the most vulnerable users in a cycle where fees make it impossible to pay down the principal, guaranteeing perpetual interest payments. These mechanisms, daily compounding, the ghost of two-cycle billing, and the fee APR synergy, form the hidden plumbing of the time tax. They are the quiet, automatic processes running in the background of your financial life. We accept them as the norm, the cost of convenience. But that acceptance is born from a lack of translation. We have not been taught to see the interest charge on our statement as a direct lien against our future time. So, as we close this first examination, the question is not merely about mathematics. It is about translation. The $35 interest charge on your statement is not just $35. It is the hour and a half you spent working last Thursday. It is the dinner you skipped to make a payment. It is a fractional ownership of your effort and your life, claimed by an algorithm designed to maximize its own yield. But this understanding of the mechanism is only the first layer. If the mechanical reality is a silent daily calculation, the psychological architecture that makes us accept it is far more powerful. The minimum payment, the promotional rate, the very way our brains are wired to perceive plastic versus cash. These are the tools that make the time tax not just possible, but palatable. That is where our story turns next. If the mechanics of credit card interest are a hidden engine, then the minimum payment is its most brilliant invention. It is not a financial tool. It is a psychological masterstroke. It transforms a daunting, often frightening liability into a seemingly manageable, even trivial, monthly subscription. A subscription to your own debt. Consider the statement. It arrives, whether physically or digitally, and immediately our eyes perform a triage. The total balance triggers a pang of anxiety, a number often symbolizing overreach, impulse, or emergency. But then the gaze drops lower. There it is, the minimum payment due. This figure, frequently 1 to 3% of the total balance plus that month's interest and fees, is crafted to feel harmless. $35 on a $2,000 balance. $75 on a $5,000 balance. The cognitive relief is immediate and profound. The brain registers, I can handle this. The system is not asking for the whole. It is asking for a token, a gesture of compliance. And in that moment of relief, a critical transaction occurs. We trade the long-term burden of the principal for the short-term comfort of the minimum. We accept a state of permanent indebtedness to avoid the temporary pain of liquidation. This is the illusion of control. Making the minimum payment feels responsible. It feels like staying on top of things. It avoids late fees and protects a credit score. But this is a dangerous semantic shift. Managing debt is not the same as eliminating debt. In fact, by opting for the minimum, you are not managing the debt. You are managing your emotional response to the debt. The bank, however, is managing its asset, your obligation, beautifully, ensuring its longevity and profitability. To understand the true cost of this illusion, we must move beyond the monthly snapshot and examine the amortization schedule of a credit card debt. This is the roadmap of your financial servitude, and its revelation is often the first genuine shock for consumers. Let us take a concrete, stark example. Imagine a $5,000 credit card balance, accumulated perhaps from a combination of a medical deductible, car repairs, and holiday spending. The card carries a modest-sounding 18% annual percentage rate. The holder, determined to be responsible, commits to paying the minimum payment each month, which starts at around $125. The intuitive assumption is that this discipline will clear the debt in a few years. The reality is an actuarial marvel of extended obligation. Paying only the minimum, it would take approximately 22 years to extinguish this $5,000 debt. The total amount paid over those 264 months would exceed $11,700. More than $1,600 of that would be pure interest. You would have paid for the original $5,000 items nearly 2.5 times over. The initial purchases, the medical procedure, the new tires, the gifts are gone, dissolved into memory and utility. but the financial echo reverberates for decades. This timeline reveals the most insidious phase of credit card debt, the interest-only decade. In the first 10 to 12 years of this repayment schedule, the vast majority of each minimum payment is consumed by the accruing interest. A payment of $125 might see $110 allocated to interest and a mere $15 chipping away at the principal $5,000. For over a decade, you are effectively renting the debt itself. You are paying a premium for the privilege of continuing to owe money. The principal balance, the original sin, remains almost untouched, a monument to financial stagnation. This is not debt repayment. It is debt maintenance. This architecture is further obscured by the allure of the promotional rate trap. The 0% APR introductory offer is a potent siren call. It presents itself as a financial life raft, a period of respite, and it can be exactly that, if wielded with strategic precision and understood in its entirety. The trap, however, lies in the dual nature of these promotions. First, there is the standard teaser rate on purchases or balance transfers. For 12, 15, or 18 months, no interest accrues. The psychological effect is liberating. The minimum payment drops, as it is now calculated only on the principal. The debt feels lighter, frozen. But this is a lone stopwatch. The consumer often makes one of two critical errors. They use the breathing room to increase spending on the card, or they make only the new, lower minimum payments. When the promotional period expires, the standard rate, often 24% or higher, snaps into effect on the entire remaining balance. That balance, now potentially larger, immediately begins its daily compounding under a much harsher regime. The respite was not a solution, it was a deferred reckoning. An even more perilous variant is the deferred interest offer, common with store financing for big-ticket items like furniture or electronics. No interest if paid in full in 24 months. This is not a true 0% APR. It is a suspense account. If you pay even $1 less than the full original balance by the end of the promotional period, the entirety of the accrued interest from the past 24 months is immediately added to your principal. You have not been making interest-free payments. You have been making payments under a Damocles sword. A single missed deadline or a final underpayment triggers a retroactive interest charge that can amount to hundreds or thousands of dollars, instantly catapulting your balance backward. Underpinning our susceptibility to these mechanisms is a fundamental neurological disconnect. Behavioral economists have identified a concept known as the pain of paying. When we hand over physical cash, the brain registers a tangible loss. The finite nature of the bills, the act of parting with them, creates a psychological friction that moderates spending. The credit card severs this connection. The transaction is abstracted, a swipe, a tap, a click. The pain is deferred, diluted, and bundled into a future statement. The minimum payment then further anesthetizes this pain, breaking the large, scary cost into a small, manageable fee. The result is a perfect psychological storm. The mechanics of daily compounding create a rapidly growing liability. The minimum payment offers a soothing, illusory control over it. Promotional rates encourage us to take on more of it, and our own neurology makes the entire process feel less real than the exchange of crumpled dollar bills. We have, therefore, been complicit in our own financial containment. But this complicity was engineered. The question that now arises from understanding this engineered psychology is, who architected this system for such profitability? Who are the silent beneficiaries of our comfort with perpetual interest-bearing debt? The answer extends far beyond the name on the front of your card. To view the credit card solely as a transaction between you and your issuing bank is to misunderstand the modern financial landscape. Your revolving balance is not merely a liability on your personal ledger. It is an asset in a vast, interconnected ecosystem. When you carry a balance, you become a small but integral node in a network designed to convert consumer uncertainty into institutional yield. This ecosystem profits not from your debt being settled, but from its careful, perpetual management. Let us start with the most direct beneficiary, the issuing bank. Their revenue from interest and fees is explicit. But their strategy is nuanced. Through sophisticated algorithms, they segment their cardholders into behavioral profiles. The most profitable customer is not the one who never uses the card, nor the one who defaults entirely. The ideal customer is the revolver, the individual who reliably carries a substantial balance from month to month, dutifully paying the high interest charges while making consistent, above minimum payments that ensure the debt's longevity. This customer generates a steady, high-margin annuity for the bank. The entire product design, from credit limit increases to payment due dates strategically set shortly after payday, is optimized to cultivate and retain this revolver. However, the bank is just the first actor in a longer chain. Every time you swipe your card, a small, invisible toll is paid. This is the interchange fee, typically 1 to 3% of the transaction amount, paid by the merchant's bank to your card-issuing bank via the payment network, Visa, MasterCard, etc. This fee subsidizes the entire credit card infrastructure, including the rewards programs that entice spending. A consumer carrying a balance often spends more to manage cash flow, generating more of these fee-rich transactions. Thus, your revolving debt habit indirectly fuels the very reward points you might be chasing, creating a perverse cycle where your interest payments help fund the free travel of those who pay in full each month. The financialization of your debt goes deeper. Your outstanding balance, particularly if it is part of a large pool of similar debts, is not just an account receivable on the bank's books. It is a potential financial product. Through a process known as securitization, banks can bundle thousands of credit card receivables, your promises to pay with their attached interest rates, into a single new security. This security, often called an asset-backed security, ABS, is then sliced into tranches with varying risk and return profiles and sold to institutional investors, pension funds, hedge funds, insurance companies. Your personal 24.99% APR, your minimum payment, your financial behavior are anonymized, aggregated, and transformed into a yield-generating instrument traded on global markets. Your struggle with monthly payments becomes, for a distant investor, a statistical component of a portfolio's return. The system is engineered so that the persistence of your debt creates liquidity and investment opportunities far from your kitchen table. This ecosystem is fueled by data. Every transaction, every payment pattern, every instance of carrying a high balance is captured, analyzed, and monetized. This behavioral data harvest serves two purposes. First, it allows for hyper-targeted marketing, not just for other credit products, but for anything your spending suggests you might want. More critically, it informs risk-based pricing and prescriptive analytics. The system learns what kind of borrower you are and tailors its engagement to maximize profitability. It might offer a tantalizing balance transfer to a chronic revolver, not to help them, but to move them from a competitor's book and secure their future interest payments. The data loop ensures the offers you receive are designed to deepen your entanglement in the ecosystem. This brings us to a complex and often uncomfortable symbiosis: the relationship between carried balances and credit scores. Common financial advice correctly states that using a small portion of your available credit, typically 1 to 9% utilization, and paying on time is beneficial for your FICO or Vantage score. This is a statistical reflection of responsible credit management. However, this nuance is catastrophically misunderstood by many as, you must carry a small balance to build credit. This is a profound and costly error. There is a world of difference between reporting a balance and carrying a balance that accrues interest. You can charge expenses to your card, have a statement cut with a $500 balance, which is then reported to the credit bureaus, and pay that statement balance in full by the due date. You will never pay a cent in interest, but you will have demonstrated active, responsible credit use. This is the optimal path. The misconception that one must pay interest to build credit is a persistent and profitable myth for the ecosystem. It encourages needless interest payments from consumers mistakenly trying to game their scores. Finally, we must confront a broader, more philosophical question raised by this ecosystem. A dominant narrative in modern economics is that consumer spending is the primary engine of economic growth. We are encouraged to spend to do our part. Credit, in this view, is the lubricant that enables this spending beyond immediate cash constraints. This frames debt as a social and economic good. Therefore, in a twisted logical chain, the responsible revolver, the individual consistently paying high interest, can be seen as a subsidizing agent. Their interest payments help maintain the infrastructure, rewards, banking profits, securitization markets that facilitates the smooth flow of consumer credit for everyone. They bear a disproportionate cost for the system's existence. They are the necessary, high-margin feedstock that allows for the offering of low-margin or loss-leader products to others. This realization can be paralyzing. It can feel as if one is not just fighting a bank, but a web of economic incentives, data systems, and capital markets that are structurally aligned against debt liquidation. The system appears designed for permanence, not resolution. Yet, this very understanding is the precursor to empowerment. To navigate a system effectively, you must first see its true boundaries, its pressure points, and its incentives. Knowing that you are not merely a debtor, but a data point, a securitized asset, and a statistical profile changes the nature of the game. It shifts the challenge from one of simple arithmetic to one of strategic disengagement. The path forward, then, is not just to calculate payments, but to rewrite the narrative, to change your profile from a source of perpetual yield to a closed account. It requires a new script, one of deliberate, informed, and psychological warfare against the very habits the ecosystem cultivates. Understanding the ecosystem is not an invitation to surrender. It is the essential intelligence required for a successful counter-strategy. The goal is not merely to pay off a number. It is to execute a deliberate, psychological, and financial withdrawal from the system of perpetual interest. It is to shift your identity from a passive revolver to an active value auditor. This begins with a fundamental recalibration of perspective. Every dollar paid in interest is not a cost of borrowing, but a direct diversion of capital from your future self. It is an anti-investment. The first and most powerful step is this cognitive shift from debtor to auditor. As a value auditor, your primary function is to assess the true cost of every financial obligation in terms of life energy and lost opportunity. Do not look at a $50 interest charge as $50. See it as the future cost. That $50, if invested in a broad market index fund with a historical average annual return of 7%, would be worth over $400 in 30 years. The credit card interest you pay today is not just consuming your present income. It is eradicating a future asset. Your statement becomes a report on the ongoing erosion of your potential net worth. This frame turns apathy into urgency. With this mindset, tactical actions transform from chores into strategic strikes. Consider the balance transfer. In the ecosystem's terms, this is a customer acquisition tool, offering a 0% APR period to lure you from a competitor. In your script, it is a strategic runway. It is a temporary, interest-free zone in which to execute a focused debt elimination campaign. The critical rules for this tool are non-negotiable. First, the goal is total principal elimination within the promotional window, not mere relief. Second, you must account for the transfer fee, typically 3 to 5%, and incorporate it into your payoff math. Third, you must cease all new purchases on this card. The runway must remain clear for takeoff. This tool is not a solution. It is a timed opportunity for one. The most mathematically efficient method for attacking multiple debts is the debt avalanche. This is not just a ranking system. It is a targeted siege. You list your debts not by balance, but by annual percentage rate from highest to lowest. You make minimum payments on all, but you deploy every additional dollar of available capital against the debt with the highest APR. This method systematically destroys the most toxic, fastest-growing parts of your debt portfolio first. You are sabotaging the enemy's command center, the interest rate compounding that does the most damage. Each high-interest debt eliminated represents a permanent increase in your monthly cash flow, which is then rolled into the siege of the next target. The psychological victory of paying off a small balance may be deferred, but the financial efficiency maximizes the preservation of your life energy. A profoundly underutilized tactic is the direct negotiation. The script for this call is a performance of informed leverage. It is not a plea, it is a business proposition. Prepare by researching competitive offers you may have received. Then call the number on the back of your card. The dialogue is precise. Hello, I am a long-term customer reviewing my finances. I am committed to paying down my balance, but the current APR of X% is a significant obstacle. I have other options available to me at lower rates. I'm calling to ask if there are any retention offers, hardship programs, or APR reductions available on my account to help me succeed in paying this down with you. This statement does three things. It establishes you as a loyal but dissatisfied customer. It implies you are a flight risk, costing them future interest. And it frames your request as a mutual goal, you paying down the balance, which still benefits them. Success is not guaranteed, but a reduction of even a few percentage points can save thousands over time. To counter the psychological power of the minimum payment, you must weaponize automation. But not for the minimum. Set up an automatic payment for a fixed amount significantly above the minimum. If the minimum is $75, automate a payment of $125. This creates passive, forced progress. It ensures that even in months of distraction or low motivation, you are automatically allocating extra capital to principal reduction. It rewires the system's expectation of your behavior. Underpinning all these tactics must be a powerful personal why visualization. The abstract goal of being debt-free is insufficient. You must connect each payment to a tangible, emotional future reality. The visualization is specific. This $200 payment is not to Citibank. It is a down payment on my sabbatical. This $75 charge-off is buying back a Saturday afternoon with my children, free from financial anxiety. This finalized account will be the seed capital for my side business. You are not paying down a past mistake. You are purchasing future freedom piece by piece. This narrative is your psychological fuel. This path is not linear. It is iterative and messy. There will be months of setback, unexpected expenses, and frustration. The ecosystem's allure, the easy swipe, the deferred pain, will remain. The comeback philosophy accepts this. It does not seek perfection. It seeks persistent, directed action. It understands that the real battle is not fought once in a grand decision, but daily, in 100 small choices to audit value, to siege the high-interest debt, to visualize the future being purchased. This mess, this nonlinear struggle, is where the raw material of true transformation is found. It is in the navigation of this human, imperfect process that the most compelling stories are written, not stories of easy victory, but of hard-won reclamation. It is to these stories we now turn, for in them lies not only proof of concept, but the blueprint for your own script, the theory of the time tax, the psychology of the minimum, the vast, indifferent ecosystem. These are the maps of the territory. But the territory itself is walked by people. The true power of this understanding is not revealed in spreadsheets, but in the lived human experience of reclamation. To see the architecture of the system is one thing. To watch someone dismantle their piece of it brick by brick is another. That is where inspiration transcends analysis. Let us examine one such story, a composite of countless real journeys, which we will call the case of the invisible paycheck. Meet Daniel, a graphic designer with a stable income. For years, Daniel's debt was a quiet background hum, a $23,000 mosaic spread across 4 credit cards, accumulated through a blend of entrepreneurial hustle, emergency vet bills, and the slow creep of lifestyle inflation. He managed it. He made his payments. The annual interest he paid was approximately $4,200. He understood this as a cost of doing business, a vague financial burden. The turning point was not a dramatic crisis, but a simple act of auditing his life energy. At the urging of a friend, he calculated that $4,200 was not an abstract number. It represented, after taxes, roughly 1 full month of his annual labor. Every year, he was working from January 1st until late January, purely to service the interest on past spending. He was donating a 13th monthly paycheck to the financial ecosystem, receiving nothing in return. This was the shock. the visceral realization that a significant portion of his time was not his own. His comeback was a textbook application of the philosophy, but its execution was uniquely human. The siege. He employed the debt avalanche, targeting a card with a 24.99% APR first. He sold photography equipment he no longer used, generating a $1,000 siege fund for his initial assault. The runway. He successfully negotiated a 0% APR balance transfer on a portion of the debt, creating an 18-month runway. He then cut up the physical cards, leaving only one for a single, budgeted recurring bill to maintain his credit profile. The automation and visualization. He automated a bi-weekly payment aligned with his paychecks. He named his debt accounts in his budgeting software not after the banks, but after his goals. Studio fund drain, freedom tax, vacation block. The setback. 6 months in, his car transmission failed. This was the critical test. The old script would have been to put the $2,000 repair on a card. Instead, he used a small emergency fund he'd started, took on a freelance project specifically to cover the remainder, and communicated with his mechanic about a payment plan. He protected the runway. The outcome was mathematical. He became debt-free in 34 months. But the true transformation was psychological and existential. The ripple effects were profound. Career agency. Freed from the need to cover the $350 monthly interest drain, he could afford to turn down low-margin, high-stress freelance work. This space allowed him to develop a specialized niche, increasing his day rate by 40%. Health and relationships. The constant, low-grade anxiety that had manifested as poor sleep and irritability lifted. His financial arguments with his partner ceased, not because they were richer, but because they were aligned and transparent. The mindset of ownership. Daniel described the feeling not as being debt-free, but as having repatriated his future. He had moved from being a source of yield for an ecosystem to being the sole investor in his own life. Daniel's story is not exceptional in its result, but in its demonstration of the process. It validates the raw truth. This work is hard. It requires you to stare unflinchingly at numbers you have avoided. It demands a confrontation with your past choices and a disciplined rewriting of daily habits. It is, in essence, a form of financial integrity, a realignment of your actions with your long-term self-interest. This path of confrontation and realignment is the core of what we explore. And this brings me to you, and to my sincere invitation. Your story does not end with the balance on your last statement. It is being written by what you do next. The unease you may feel, that mix of recognition and possibility as we've dissected the time tax and the ecosystem, is not accidental. It is your awareness awakening. That is your starting signal. This awakening and the strategic path that follows is the sole reason for our channel, Credit Comeback Stories. This is not merely a finance channel. It is a dedicated space for the archaeology of financial transformation. We function as a witness stand for these real-world turnarounds. Each week, we deconstruct not just the what, but the how, and more importantly, the why. We analyze the psychological shifts, the tactical gambits, the setbacks navigated, and the profound life changes that occur when individuals stop feeding the ecosystem and start funding their futures. We delve deeper than surface-level tips. We examine the systemic structures, the behavioral psychology, and the human narratives of discipline and resilience. We provide the intelligence and the inspiration to fuel your own campaign. Therefore, if this dialogue has reframed even one decimal point in your understanding, if you have felt that spark of recognition that says, I can audit my own life energy, then your next step is clear. I invite you to join our community of active reclaimers. Subscribe to Credit Comeback Stories on YouTube. By subscribing, you are not just adding a channel to a list, you are enlisting in a collective mindset of strategic financial empowerment. Hit the notification bell to ensure you receive our weekly deep dives, because the insights that could redefine your trajectory should not be left to chance. Become part of this conversation. In the comments of the video for this presentation, I encourage you to share. What is one financial insight or realization that recently clicked for you? It could be about the time tax, the minimum payment illusion, or your own moment of audit. The community we are building thrives on shared learning and mutual support. Your insight could be the key that unlocks someone else's understanding. Remember, the interest you pay is a price. The ultimate question you must answer is, what are you purchasing with that price? Ensure it is an investment in your future sovereignty, not a perpetual subscription to your past. Let your comeback story begin. Subscribe to Credit Comeback Stories on YouTube. Let's write the next chapter together.